Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to Step Back Tonight for today, November 16th, 2021. I'm your host, Tristan. How are we doing tonight, chat? How's everyone doing? Got somebody asking my week was? My week was good. It was busy, but it was good. We can get a Kyle Rittenhouse take tonight. I mean, you already got one here. I talked a little bit about it last episode, so on Monday, but I know that not everybody watches everything, so I might be able to rehash some takes from yesterday. Wouldn't be a bad idea. What else we got here? How am I supposed to dislike your videos and show my true alphaness? I know you have been brought down by the matriarchy that is YouTube getting rid of the dislike feature or dislike counts, which is the thing that everyone seems to want to have an opinion on, and I'm actually like struggling to have anything close to resembling an opinion about it. What are my plans for Thanksgiving? Yeah, my Thanksgiving was back in October, so none. The only thing that's happening because of American Thanksgiving is that that's Thursday night is usually the night that I record It's Probably Not Aliens, the podcast I run with Scott Nice Wonder, and that is being canceled for that night because Scott has to go do Thanksgiving stuff. So, hey, loving the crying column. Thank you, John Barlich. It's pretty good. Let's see. All right. I think that's all the things I see in the chat, right, to get started. So, why don't we just move into my opening spiel? All right. My name's Tristan. I'm the host of Step Back and Step Back, the YouTube channel, and the podcast It's Probably Not Aliens. I'm a co-host of that with Scott Nice Wonder. You can find my work at either stepbackhistory.com or probsnotaliens.com, or you can find It's Probably Not Aliens wherever great podcasts are sold. I stream on Mondays and Tuesdays. All of this is going to be Eastern time. I stream on Mondays from 12 till 2, and on Tuesdays from 7 till 9. Mondays, I do the Monday Discourse, which is with Mia Mulder, and we answer questions and talk about stuff and say, all that kind of thing. And then, Tuesday nights I do Step Back Tonight, where I talk about stuff that's going on and everything. So that's my life. I go by he, him pronouns. If you want to support my work, you can go to patreon.com/stepbackhistory. Or if you have Amazon Prime, you can use your one free Twitch Prime subscription to, help me out for a month. It all helps. And if you have any extra change around, of course, super chats, bits, subscriptions, all those things are very much appreciated. My latest video is on... My latest video is on the concept of overpopulation. It's been a really long time since I have recorded a video, and that is been out for a while. I hope you're enjoying it. My next video, I think I just saw, should be coming out tomorrow. So tomorrow at 1 p.m. So expect some content. If you're a patron, you can watch it now, but yeah, tomorrow. And if you want to submit questions to future streams, I'll put a link in the chat where you can submit links for... let's try sending that again to just Twitch, because it didn't send out to Twitch. So yeah, there's that. And then, if this is your first time watching a stream, then please make yourself known in the chat. So say hello and yeah, make yourself part of the community. We've got quite a thing going on, so hope you all come out. All right, let's see what we got. What's going on in chat? Let's see what we got for stuff. Where should I decide to get the 3D? Where should I decide what 3D printer to get? Well, yeah. How did I decide? So 2 questions, which is one, what kind of things do you plan on printing? If you plan on printing more usable everyday items, then you're probably going to want a regular plastic filament printer. They are much easier to set up and get going and to make stuff, and also make things that are bigger. But what you gain in, like, speed and price and usability, you lose detail. And the other one would be a resin printer, which is designed for making much smaller 3D printed objects, but it uses liquid resin. You have to deal with all of the shit that comes with using resin, which is like there's a whole bunch of safety concerns and stuff like that you have to deal with. But resin printers do make smaller, more detailed prints. And since I bought a 3D printer primarily to make D&D miniatures, that's the one I bought, so I bought a resin printer. As far as how I chose the one that I bought, which is Creality something or other, was that my friend, I luckily have a friend who is like an absolute beast at finding like really good deals or finding different, like he's really good at finding good deals, knowing what kind of tech to buy and not to buy. He knows where to get deals. He knows how to, if I just have any questions about, if I'm planning on buying any technology, I will talk to him first and he will be able to tell me exactly what I should buy, where I should buy it, and how much I should pay for it. And he knew that I was in the market for a 3D printer, and he mentioned that there was a resin printer that was pretty decent that was on sale, so I picked it up on his recommendation. Still yet to hear an actual lawyer says the judge has been unreasonable. Ooh. I don't give a shit. The legal system is a farce meant to hold up white supremacy. That includes the lawyers. But sure. Let's see. Have you heard about Russia shooting down their own plane? I haven't heard about a plane. I've heard about a satellite. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. But, yeah. Just came to say hi, doing laundry at 1 a.m. for some odd reason. We'll be going soon. Have a nice stream. We'll be watching the video in the morning. Well, thank you, 5R Nuntius. Much appreciated. If you're watching this tomorrow, hi. If I reduce my Patreon right back to $1, will you get the 4 for this month? Yes, it charges right away. So you've already paid. In your world, what comes after police abolitionism? World peace. Anarchism. Is the video tomorrow the cybernetic anarchism one? It's about cybernetics. It's not about cybernetic anarchism. I feel like cybernetic anarchism is a term that I have to really find out if it is one that I've even made up. And if it isn't, then I have to actually like write something smart about what it means to make a video about it. So give it some time. If I wanted to make useful parts, ABS extrusion is the method, and then just compare specs from there. Yeah, unless you want to make like really, really detailed small things, you should probably go with an ABS extrusion because STL is, or not STL, STL is just the name of the file. But resin printers are very much for making like those little things like Warhammer and stuff like that. But if you, and even you can even make miniatures like that with extrusion 3D printers. It's just that they will be a little bit less detailed and you have to do a little bit of sanding and like that kind of thing, but not to an extreme extent. Like the only thing is that like 3D resin printer can make like 0.2 millimeter type differences is the thing. I can't believe I got into an hour-long argument with Ed the Sock over Rittenhouse. What is life anymore? For real. Oh. All right. Um, any book recommendations? I could do that. I could do that before getting into news. Sure. I always have this thing. I get asked for book recommendations all the time. So I have so many books that I like that I just go to Goodreads and look at some books that I've read and gave 5 stars to, because I'm up to 34 books I've read this year. Like, I read a lot, and so I end up having a lot of books, and recommendations are, it's always a fun time. So let's see. Read. So let's see what kind of recommendations I can give you. Ooh, okay. First one is The Immortal Hulk. If you haven't read The Immortal Hulk, you probably should. It's pretty good. It's a comic book series about the Hulk. But it's like the Hulk with like evil, it's a discussion on the nature of whether or not the nature of evil is a thing, and about like weird twisting like realities and warped stuff, and it like gets into body horror and all sorts of stuff. It's like one of the coolest, weirdest takes on the Hulk I've ever seen. So that's one. That is one book. It's another good one. That would be... I already did a comic. So let's something else. It's gonna... Bullshit Jobs. Okay, Bullshit Jobs. Classic. David Graeber, rest in peace. Probably one of the greatest analysts of economics and society in our current age, and our society is way less without him. He died last year, is why I'm saying that. But his book Bullshit Jobs is an absolute amazing analysis of how many jobs have actually no purpose, and that many jobs don't have any purpose. They're meant to usually fulfill either emotional needs of people who have money, or they are meant to make somebody look more prestigious than they are. There's sort of like different categories of jobs that break down to they basically don't do anything. And also, because of a bunch of stuff, it's been a while since I read it, so it's like I have to think about it again. But basically, the amount of money that somebody gets paid to do a job is actually inverse based to how much they actually affect society. Like the jobs that really do the most to make society function, are the most essential, are basically some of the least paid people in the world. And the most paid people in the world basically do all of the jobs that have no actual have very minimal to no actual benefit to mankind. So there's that. So that's 2 books. Let's do a third. Why not? Okay, this is a science book called All Yesterdays: Unique and Speculative Views on Dinosaurs and Other Prehistoric Animals. Friggin' it's a book of art, paleo art of dinosaurs, but it uses, it kind of deals with the whole skin on bones type issue with dinosaur art in a lot of cases, where a lot of depictions of dinosaurs are just like depictions of basically just skin being drawn over top of the skeletons and make them all look like pointy, bony monsters, which if you were to make a normal animal like that, they would all look kind of weird. So this is like pictures of things like dinosaurs that have fat, dinosaurs that are fluffy, dinosaurs that don't do things that do things that aren't typical, that we don't expect of them, all that kind of stuff. And so that's like the main thing of it. So yeah. Can you imagine a thing like CyberSyn being tried in a country today, or would the global capitalist market just not allow that? Yeah, I don't think so. I feel like it would not survive. It would be considered tyranny or something. Opinion on YouTube getting rid of the dislike count? I don't care. I don't think it's going to have much of an effect. I don't particularly give a shit. Have I started his new final book yet? No, I am actually reading a really good book right now that I can't be pried from, which is called The Emperor of All Maladies, a biography of cancer, which is so good. I am like, because like I don't know if anyone knows this. My training is in technology history primarily, and communication history, but the medical history of cancer and like all that kind of stuff, like I don't know, The Emperor of All Maladies is like turning out to be. I mean, it's a very highly rated book. Like it's a book that like a lot of people have read. And now I know why, because it's extremely compelling. It's a very good read. I did not expect I was going to enjoy it as much as I do, as much as I am. But I have read some articles talking about David Graeber's last book, and so I am interested in what he has to say, because he was very right about a lot of things. So I imagine his take on re-examining human history will be very good to read. Are doctors an exemption to the least impact / most pay equation? Yeah, to an extent. Have I read All Tomorrows? No, I have not. Is All Tomorrows like that weird one where like they speculate that humans are going to speciate in all sorts of weird ways and they have like space humans? That was fun. I assume treating cancer is so hard because the cancer is kind of part of the victim's body. Exactly. And also on top of that, a lot of things that you use to treat cancer will get rid of a lot of the cells. David, is that David Graeber or Graeber? Graeber with a B. So the thing about what I'm learning about cancer so much is that cancer is kind of better at evolving and and like, because it reproduces so fast and out of control, it's better at healing and growing and evolving than even the human body is. And so the only things that have been used to really attack cancer are sort of toxic things that make fast dividing cells specifically die. Like chemotherapy, it does that. It attacks fast growing cells. That's why people who are undergoing chemotherapy have to deal with like issues with like their skin and with their hair and with their nails, because those are all the parts of the body that grow the fastest, and it affects those specifically. So yeah, that's like the main thing. Radiation is it kind of burns the cells. The main thing, radiation isn't so much that it affects the whole body. It's just that you can target radiation on the tumor to kill it. That's how that works. But it is interesting. It's kind of going through the history of cancer treatment to go from like when it was just a thing that people just died. There's no way to cure it. They were just given palliative care, to like early surgery where they did like these huge extractive surgeries. I hope that this isn't too gross for anybody. But like they would do these like disfiguring massive surgeries on people who had cancer. Like if they if they had cancer of like the testicles, they would like basically empty out the entire pelvis, cut it all out, basically just like really like overdo it. And even that didn't have a great survival rate, even if you survived the surgery. And then they discovered radiation therapy when they were doing when they were doing experiments with radium and all that kind of stuff. But then chemotherapy was actually discovered with sort of the chemistry that was being done during the First World War with chemical warfare and such. So I'm having a fucking ball reading this book. I gotta say, that's a book recommendation right there. It's called The Emperor of All Maladies, and it's really good. And yeah, the other thing too is because they reproduce out of control, they also mutate, which means that they evolve, which means that if a certain type of drug kills most of the cancer that survives is likely the ones that have a mutation that makes them resistant to that medicine. So there's like evolution involved in such like that too. There was a Roman emperor whose wife died of cancer. I remember thinking that was really surreal when I found out, because I think of it as a modern disease. Yeah, there's an entire chapter about why that is, too. So like that is a thing that is discussed, because like the 19th century was defined by tuberculosis, for example, and that the 20th century could very well be defined by either heart disease or cancer. Nanoparticles are advancing and they will deliver cancer-killing medicine to tumors. They have been using it in the lab for years. I'm not sure if it's available yet. I don't think so. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff that's like, genetically sequencing your tumor cells and then making targeted particles to kill it and all that kind of stuff. So there's some really cool stuff like just on the cusp of what's going to be possible in medical science, and a very new thing. It's been identified only recently. That's not true. There's like, what's it called? There's like ancient Greek writings about cancer. The word cancer comes from like Hippocrates or something, not Hippocrates, but I think Galen actually. Like the term cancer comes from Galen looking at a tumor and thinking that it looked like a crab. Why do we think of it as a modern thing? So most cancers, most cancers, except for like a few of them, were like, what's it called? Most cancers before, until we were able to do like X-rays and MRIs, like internal scans of the body. We weren't really aware that a lot of things were cancer, if it wasn't like something like breast cancer or skin cancer or something like that. So that was one of the main reasons that people were dying of cancer, but we didn't know that it was cancer. And then Galen suspected that it was an imbalance of too much black bile in the system, which meant that he kind of cured it with like bloodletting and stuff like that. It was really wild. And so that was the case. And also the other thing too is that cancer tends to affect people as they get older, and like to the point where like age and cancer are very heavily related to each other. And people, when they got to older age, tended to die of diseases that were not cancer. So the prevalence of cancer was lower because people died more often of things like TB or smallpox or something like that when they got older instead, or an infection. So there's this whole thing, because somebody kind of pointed out a sort of fallacy about how we think about cancer. There's a lot of people who think that cancer is increasing, and they're like, oh, it's because of the foods and because of the food and the whatever thing I don't like. That's the reason why cancer is increasing. But it's really not. There are some things that are carcinogenic that have caused cancers. They are very linkable because the kind of cancers you get are pretty linked to the thing that are causing it. But the most part, like, cancer is increasing because we are essentially killing all of the other forms of ways of dying. So as people are living longer, as people are finding treatments, at least to live longer with all sorts of diseases, many infections and viruses are being either treated or killed entirely, that as this happens more and more, the only one that we haven't really been able to really attack is the one that we haven't been able to make like really big progress on, and we already are making really big progress on it, is cancer. And so as the other like causes of death start to dissipate, cancer is becoming the prevalent one. And it's also very likely that in the past, because we didn't know that things were cancer, we attributed those deaths to other things. Like very often, people thought that people who died of cancer were dying of an infection because the symptoms were so different there, or similar. There was a fever and they felt sick and then they died. So there's a lot of like people who thought that who died of cancer who thought that there was, but cancer's been around forever. But yeah, it's a pretty. So most people who've died through cancer through history, to the people around it seem like they just got sick and died for no reason. Yeah, so they usually attributed it to disease or infection, basically. But like we have seen things like we have seen mummified bodies that have tumors. We have seen there are stories from like the Persian Empire. Like there's a Persian queen that had a breast cancer, that had a mastectomy. There's like all sorts of like things about that. So. But yeah, but also, I also think in many ways the idea of like curing cancer is actually more like, is like the idea of like curing viruses. It's a very complex and multifaceted systemic disease that has to be addressed in so many different ways and can present itself in so many different ways that it's really going to be a whole thing in and of itself. If we find like a big systemic cure for cancer, it would change so much. But I have a feeling that we're more going to be hacking around it, you know, until we really find something that, unless like the nanomachine thing works. But nanomachines do feel so far away. There's a queen that had a vasectomy. Did I misspeak? No. You misheard me. I said mastectomy. A removal of the breast. Personally, the best way to cure cancer is to be a brain in a jar. I think that technologically, we are way closer to a cure for cancer than we are to like memory or brain uploading. Personally, every time you talk about books, it's a wake-up call for me to read more. How do you find the energy to read 1 million books? Easy. Audiobooks. Audiobooks is my secret sauce. I have a library card, and I am always listening to audiobooks when I am out for walks or when I go to the gym 5 days a week or 4 days a week. So I go to the gym 4 days a week, and then I go for like 45 to hour long walks on every single day, whether or not I'm going to the gym. So I have a lot of time to listen to audiobooks. And they have a pretty good collection too. Yeah. I am always reading a textbook at any given time as well. So that is also a thing. I'm currently reading sort of like a thing. You guys might not know this because a lot of you guys are all youngins. But there was a book series that I thought there were only 2 books in, but I found out that it was a trilogy just recently. And the first book was called Scorpion Shards. And it was a very cool book that I read when I was like in high school or whatever, or in middle school. And there was a sequel that I can't remember the name of right now, but then I thought that had ended. But it seems that there's a third book in the series that ended like back in like 2004 or something. So I'm reading the final book in that series right now. I think it's called like is it weird that I don't actually even remember the name of the book that I'm currently reading? It is called... Someone's gonna get to it before me. It's called Shattered Sky. That's the name of the book I'm reading. And then, yeah, the audiobook I'm reading is The Emperor of All Maladies, which is why I was talking about cancer for the last 20 minutes. Have I read Robert J. Sawyer farce here about a planet of transplanted sapient dinosaurs and their Galileo figure? No, I haven't. We have no nanobots. We're pretty far from nanobots. That makes sense to me. Nanobots seem like they're almost like they're like very, very far in the future tech. Making something that sophisticated, that small, and then having it be able to do all sorts of functions, it would completely change the way that we approach not only medicine, but basically everything. And we are, yeah, I feel like we're very far from that kind of technology. But nanoparticles that can be used for like for healthcare related reasons, yeah, I think that's reasonably close. So I guess I should probably start my show. Hey? So let's do some news. Let's do some really fast news. So the first story we got here is that Russia destroyed a satellite in an ASAT test. So this is a scary thing. I'm sure that you guys have heard about the issue of space junk and space junk being a sort of like being an issue, right? If you guys haven't, because there's no air in space, and that if something gets itself into a stable orbit in our on our planet, it just stays there forever until its orbit decays, which can sometimes take like thousands, millions of years. And to be dangerous, they don't have to be very big. Like something as small as a fleck of paint could cause serious damage to a satellite or something like that. And so that's a thing. That is a thing. And what happened is that the Chinese did this back in the 90s. But what the Russians did last week is they are testing ASAT missiles, which is basically anti-satellite weapons. So missiles designed to shoot satellites out of orbit. They did that by destroying an old Soviet space station, or old Soviet satellite. And people are fucking pissed because by testing this missile, they have created at least 1,500 pieces of trackable debris in the Earth atmosphere. So they made a humongous mess in our atmosphere of like particles moving at the speed of bullets, to the point where earlier this week as well, as a direct result of this, the International Space Station had to the people on the ISS had to hide in sort of like their bunker because of debris. So yeah, this is rough. How far are we from Kessler syndrome? What's Kessler syndrome? Scenario in which the density of objects in low Earth orbit is high enough that collisions cascade cause collisions with space debris that increases the likeliness of further collisions. 2009, Kessler wrote that modeling results have concluded that the debris environment was already unstable, such that any attempt to achieve a growth-free small debris environment by eliminating sources of past debris will likely fail because fragments from future collisions will be generated faster than atmospheric drag will remove them. One implication is that the distribution of debris in orbit would render activities and the use of satellites in certain ranges difficult for many generations. Yeah, this is definitely going to be a problem. Unless they find some way to really clean it up. But yeah, at the moment, this is becoming a problem. How far away from Kessler syndrome? You would need to talk to somebody smarter than me. From somebody at NASA would probably be able to answer. Also, this is the first time I've streamed wearing this shirt, so I should probably pay attention to it. Look at this. This shirt is based as shit, man. Alright, that's it. Alright. Next up, physicists want to create energy like stars do. These are the two ways to make their best shots. So this is about fusion power. And we've talked about fusion a couple times on this stream, because it's like pretty far away. It's like everybody who I talk to who is like rational about it shows that it's going to be like the latter half of the 21st century at the earliest before we've got anything that actually is like working fusion power. And that's being optimistic. That's the main problem. So I kind of wanted to check this article to find out what fusion power we could actually use. So the two are, yeah, the tokamak, which is the kind of donut-shaped Soviet reactor that most people are using. Will it look like the tiny something from Spider-Man 2? No, unfortunately. It'll actually look like a donut, a purple donut, basically. So that's, yeah, it took them back. Going small. So this is the one I found out about recently. So what they do is they, so does anyone know the pistol shrimp? Has anyone heard of that? Like, the pistol shrimp is a really weird animal, because one of the things that does is the way that it hunts its prey is by clacking its front claws with so much speed and power that it creates like a shock wave that stuns fish. And like, there's a lot of problems with these things because like they're known to like break aquariums, and yeah, like you can break your bones if one attacks you. The thing about them is that the pistol shrimp's claws are so powerful when they're doing this thing that they actually fuse atoms in the wake of the things they do. So this is the new one that people are talking about as a way to do fusion power, which is that you make a pellet of hydrogen, or of deuterium, I guess, and you put it in like a little glass container, right? And then you drop it, and what you do is you hit it with a like small bullet that is in this extremely powerful magnetic powered gun, like to the point where this thing is going a decent fraction of the speed of light. And you drop the pellet, the bullet hits it so hard that it fuses and creates energy through nuclear fusion. And if you just keep dropping them and blowing these things up over and over again, you'll eventually create more heat than you spend firing the bullet. That's the concept. And I mean, that would be cool. Fusion, the thing is, like, fusion power has had some very interesting breakthroughs this year. Like, there's been some some groundbreaking on some very big new projects, and also there have been some real breakthroughs on what's it called? Like on efficiency numbers and stuff like that. So it's getting there. Quick question, quick answer. What question you got? Thoughts on the policing system in Marxist-Leninist states? They hold up the power structure just like any other police. Do you think police in socialist states are marginally better? Maybe, but I think in the many times they're, because a lot of those Marxist-Leninist states are so authoritarian that they tend to use the police to brutalize people for dissent. So I don't know. What happens when mistakes are made with nuclear fusion? Not a lot. The problem with nuclear fusion isn't that it's dangerous, because it requires. The problem is that it requires a fuckload of electricity to even run. So the main problem they're having is that they cannot make a fusion reaction big and stable enough to produce more energy than it costs to make it. That's really what people are looking for. That's what they need. And so the thing is, like things like a meltdown are not really possible like in a nuclear fission reactor, because it's not a chain reaction. So like if, say, the power got cut off to a fusion power plant, the magnets, which are all giant electromagnets, which are all only really able to function because they're constantly being cooled with like liquid nitrogen, those would just turn off and the fusion reaction would dissipate. And the only like radioactive waste that would be created is that donut would eventually need to be like the sort of like outer casing would need to be replaced at some point. It would start to get radioactive. But even then, like a lot of them are designed to be like modular, so you can remove panels and stuff like that. Ugh. Sounds like Bitcoin. Bitcoin, yeah, I mean, Bitcoin has, the thing is that this would, theoretically, and we know that it works because the sun basically generates power the same way. We know that theoretically we could get fusion power to produce more power than you spend. There's no evidence on Earth that Bitcoin is ever actually going to be useful. So yeah. I hope we get to live to see a thorium reactor. Yeah, I think there's a Chinese company that's been developing it, but as with any sort of nuclear power plant technology, development is always very slow. Although I have been hearing that some people don't like thorium power for a reason that I have not investigated, but apparently there's a lot more skepticism of thorium power than I thought. So I'd have to poke into it. Because it does seem so obvious that if there wasn't some serious problems with it, then it probably would have been done already, right? I'm of the opinion that as long as any form of state exists, police will be necessary in order for a functional state to exist. Yes, but the problem is that functional states existing is the bad thing. Thorium seems really promising to me. I agree. It seems really promising to me too, but I also am very aware that I am not a nuclear physicist. And it seems really promising and very understandable to me, to the point where I would think that if there wasn't some serious problems that I'm not aware of, that it would have been developed by now. Because it's basically another thing that promises like virtually limitless power from a pretty abundant resource, which is like a metal that can be found in seawater. So I imagine that there's either some very big hurdle I don't know about towards its development, or there is some problem with it that I'm just not aware of. Maybe because it's thorium, it's abundant and can't be commodified. Maybe, but I also know that scientists would still be experimenting with it, even if it wasn't commodifiable. Like, if fusion power ever works, like, good luck trying to commodify hydrogen. So, yeah, that's gonna be a problem too. So I think that there are organizations that would still be investigating it, even if it wasn't like capitalist friendly, because there's a lot of scientists who don't really care much about the capitalism. They just want to make cool nuclear reactions. But essentially, for those who don't know, thorium power plants are essentially, so what they do is they're nuclear fission plants. They're more like traditional power plants. And the way that traditional power plants work is that you shoot a neutron at some sort of fissile material. So if you shoot a neutron at a fissile material, what happens is that the atoms in it blow up, they explode, and radiation flies everywhere. And those particles that are blown off from basically that thing exploding hit other particles that also explode. And in this process, as those nuclear bonds are broken, they create energy. So that's how like nuclear power works. The idea, but the way that it works in current nuclear power plants is that they use uranium, which is a very radioactive material, and they use graphite. So like they put it in like a reactor, and they have it always going, and then they have like rods of graphite, which is not reactive as much to neutrons. So they'll dip it in as a way to sort of like slow down or pull it out to speed up the reaction. The problem with that technology is that if this part isn't managed all the time, and if something goes wrong and they can't manage the temperature of the fuel, the reaction is going to grow out of control, and the uranium is going to get so hot that it melts, and that's called a meltdown. And the thing is that because this stuff is like self-perpetuating its own heat off of all of these atoms smashing into each other, it just keeps getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter, and it'll start melting through the floor and into the ground, and because it's all radioactive, like it'll start spreading, like contaminating all of the ground with radiation and stuff like that. And so like a lot of times, like a lot of things will happen is that, like, for example, in Fukushima had all of these like pumps that sprayed, like kept cold water flowing over the reactor to manage its temperature. And when those pumps stopped working because the power went out because of a tsunami, I think, the reactor got so hot that it melted down. And the water that was in there got so hot that it created steam. And this happened, at least I know what happened at Chernobyl. At Chernobyl, the steam was so powerful that the roof like blew up and the steam went everywhere, and the steam was close to the radiation, so it's radioactive steam just like blows up into the sky and goes everywhere. Is a fucking nightmare. And so that's sort of the problem. But thorium is a mineral that, unlike uranium is about as common in our Earth as like silver. So it's already pretty rare. Uranium is. Thorium is fucking everywhere. It's a very common. It's like not like super common, but it is pretty prevalent in our Earth. To the point where like there is you can find it in seawater, trace amounts of it. But the more easy way to get lots of thorium is in mines that mine rare earth minerals. And there's some really big rare earth mineral mines in Canada and in the United States and in China, especially in China. China's got like a lot of them. And they're already being expanded and exploited because rare earth mines are used, like a lot of the stuff that comes from rare earth mines are used for making electronics, like batteries and circuits and stuff like that. So they're already mining these places to get stuff for technology purposes. So, and thorium is so common that we don't really, like, we throw it out. It's a junk mineral. So the idea is that what we do is we take thorium, we take this mineral, and we sort of dissolve it in fluoride, fluoride, which is sort of a salt, an inorganic salt. And the salt, so the thing about it is, like, it's salt, right? So salt is solid at room temperature. So you mix it with thorium at a high temperature. You have to melt it, and it's you make something called thorium tetrafluoride. And this liquid can do nuclear fission, kind of like those, like I mentioned with the uranium, with like the chain reaction. So a chain reaction happens, but it's at a much lower speed, much lower intensity. And also because it's already liquid and it's in a material that goes solid unless it's always being heated, what it will do is it'll be heated, it'll be self-perpetually kept liquid by its own chain reaction. But and it'll always be kind of flowing around to cause that problem. So, and that's how it'll generate heat. Thing though is, if say the way that a theoretical thorium power plant would work is that there would be this sort of like drainage container that's like deep in the earth, or maybe not even that deep in the earth, but there would be like this kind of safety container underneath the power plant, and these sort of there's sort of like a plug that there's sort of like a tube that goes from the thorium reactor of like this liquid thorium tetrafluoride going around, and it would go through this tube to the emergency catch thing, and that this plug is only kept solid because it's constantly being cooled with, like, liquid nitrogen or something like that. And so what the idea is that it would be, humming around, generating power and all those kinds of things. And if, say, the power got cut off or something really bad happened and something broke, all that you would need to do is stop cooling the plug. And the plug would melt, and all of the, all of the fissioning liquid would just flow into the tank, where it would be safe. Because the thing is that, like, thorium isn't producing as much radiation as like a uranium plant. So it's like really like it's not like a nuclear like a regular nuclear power plant where you're basically constantly balancing heating the reactor up and cooling it down to keep it from basically doing a nuclear explosion or melting down. It's really like self-contained, and to the point where there are people who think that there are people who think that if you can get this technology working, it would be very autonomous. You would basically need almost no supervision, because the fuel can't be used to make bombs. It's not radioactive enough. And it requires no, like, dangerous materials. And so you could do... And it's also, like, pretty self-perpetuating. Like, all you would need to do is basically... eventually the thorium breaks down and the fuel breaks down into constituent parts. So every once in a while, you would just need to add more thorium tetrafluoride to the reactor to keep the reaction going. So you could do stuff like make one of these reactors and bury it, and then just like come back every like decade or so to refill it. So it's a very, very, very like simple reactor. So I don't know what the like engineering issue is. I think there looks like there's someone who knows what they are, who might know something else. You need to send the THF6 with the U-233F6 salts to start the reaction. Okay. So you still need a little bit of uranium to get the reaction going. That makes sense. So just need to update engineering codes to get regulators' approval. Okay. If it's really a regulation problem, that is much easier to solve than like there's some technical hurdle we don't understand yet or something like that I don't understand. But that's the technology. I know, like, what's it called? People are like, what the fuck? This is supposed to be like a history or politics stream, and you're like talking about fucking nuclear energy. But that is the like the crux of how a liquid. They're called lifter reactors, which stands for liquid fluoride thorium reactors, and they are and yeah, they're pretty neat. They're pretty neat. Especially because, like, our current generations of nuclear power plants take, like, a decade to build. They're billions of dollars. And as soon as they're built, in order to function, they basically have to be... they have to have a 24-hour security detail and have to have, like, a staff of actual nuclear engineers around to make sure that it's running properly. Which, like, is not exactly the most safe. And also, things can go wrong. I know that it's kind of gauche to talk about it, but I mean, the problem with nuclear reactors is that when they go wrong real bad, and they create exclusion zones for like thousands of years. And so even if they happen very infrequently, they can contaminate areas for a very long time, which is kind of dicey. So moving to a safer version of nuclear power plants is going to be, it would be really good, because, we don't have time to use nuclear power to solve climate change. Like, what's it called? If we were to start like 1,000 nuclear power plants today, they would not be done by the time we would need to be doing what the things we need to get done in order for us to prevent 1.5 degrees Celsius in heating. So. This is precisely why we all love you, going on tangents about nuclear fusion. Yeah, this this is not, I mean, I've been studying. I find radioactive stuff very interesting. I'm a technology historian, right? One of like my, you know, video step back videos I've been sitting on wanting to do, but then every video I did about nuclear war kind of never really took off. But I've been very interested in making a video about Herman Kahn, who is the man that Doctor Strangelove was based on, and he sort of developed the whole American theory about how to fight nuclear wars. And he was part of this like group of people who were basically trying to figure out about like the strategy of nuclear war, and about how basically it's about like, you know, destroying or trying to get as many nukes off as possible so that their capacity for launching is taken out before yours is. And like there's a whole like, you know, a whole lot of stuff to that could come up about it. But there was this book called The Worlds of Herman Kahn that I've been very interested in reading for a while, and I would love to read it and then make a video about it. But I made a video about Hiroshima back in like 2016, and I made a video, or 2017, 2016, and then I made a I don't know, I've had all of my videos about nuclear war and stuff like that have never really done well, but it's been several years since then, so maybe things are different. Aluminum-ion batteries have 3 valence electrons where lithium only has 1, so it charges faster, doesn't have the same heat problems. That would be very good. And also, aluminum is very, very light. That sounds like a fascinating video idea. Thank you. Yes. What's it called? Herman Kahn is like one of the like surprisingly most important people that doesn't get a lot of attention in American politics or American history, especially in the history of the Cold War. But I definitely want to talk about him at some point. Have I covered the Great Resignation yet? Not like personally, or not like extensively, but it's based and awesome and cool, and everyone should quit their job is the answer. I like that the people who it's like the Great Resignation in the United States, where it's basically like there are so few unions. Quitting your job is the closest thing you can do to a general strike. That's the way that I'm interpreting it, and so quitting your job is basically the closest thing to like collective worker solidarity that you can do in a country where there's so few unionized workers. And even the union and the workers that are unionized are all on goddamn strike, so it fucking rules. I'm going to make a Google alert for aluminum ion batteries though, because that sounds really cool, and I would like to see that. I have so many. This is the other thing. I have so many stupid Google alerts for like science and stuff like that because I want to see what's going on in different fields. I'd show you, but I've got some personal stuff in my Google alerts that I want to. I don't really want to talk about. So, all right. All right. Let's see. There's a book on this. Have you ever heard of a concept called prolonged nuclear war? I think the strategy was devised during the Reagan administration. What's the name of the book? I can take a look at it. Knowing Better made a recent video on Starship Troopers. That was quite good. Oh. Was it that Starship Troopers is fascist propaganda? And that Robert Heinlein is kind of shitty? But the only good version of Starship Troopers is the, what's it called? Is the Paul Verhoeven film. Anyways, Guess we can talk about Kyle Rittenhouse. The only thing that I don't have a whole lot to add to it. Kyle Rittenhouse is a murderer, and all of the lawyer nerds on the internet will not be able to, actually me into being like, actually, he's good now, and that I'm super fucking pissed off at all of the how much this has like triggered the Nazbols to really come out and have their masks fall off, and now like all of the fascist cosplaying as socialists are just absolutely losing their shit over this case. Oh, and the infrastructure bill happened, which like has basically nothing in it. It's been gutted beyond belief, right? So yeah, next up we got here is also this announcement from the podcast that I run. So It's Probably Not Aliens last week passed 20,000 downloads, which is pretty boss. Apparently that is very good for a new podcast. And I'm hoping we have this stretch goal to get to 50,000 downloads by the end of 2021. And if that happens, me and Scott are going to do a commentary track for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So, if you want to see me get very frustrated at that movie, or I guess hear me get very frustrated at that movie, then you best, recommend It's Probably Not Aliens to your friends. It's much more normie friendly than like Step Back is. So if you have some friends that you want to show content that I make to, but they're too normie for my radical content, It's Probably Not Aliens is a pretty good way to start. Are they freaking out because they're defending Rittenhouse? If so, what's their logic as so-called socialists to defend the fascist kid? Basically that they're like, he was doing self-defense, and that true socialists should be against this because it's essentially, the only thing this is about is gun control, not racism. And it's like, okay. Hey, Alex Shendy, thank you for the tier 1 subscription.
Morning.
Good morning. Oh, you must be in Australia. Good morning. Time for my toast and Vegemite. By the way, Vegemite, incredibly wrong. You are wrong for the entire nation of Australia is wrong for liking Vegemite. In Europe, but it's 2 a.m. Okay. Oh, boy. Yeah, man, I don't know how you guys in Europe are watching this stream. I'm, like, in bed by, like, 10:30. And you guys stay up until, like, 2 a.m. to watch my streams. Or 3 a.m., I guess. What is Vegemite? Vegemite is, like, this, I don't even know what it's made with. It's made from leftover brewer's yeast extract with various vegetable and spice additives. But it tastes like fucking garbage, like salty garbage, and you put it on your bread. And it's awful. And it tastes terrible. But Australians are fucking obsessed with the stuff. And, yeah, like, Australians eat that shit like crazy. It's their favorite thing. They eat it like it's goddamn peanut butter. And I don't understand why. The British have something called Marmite, which is kind of similar. Haven't managed to catch one of your live streams in a while. Love your videos, Ruth. Well, thank you, Grease's Goldtooth. Yeah, so you can hear me complain about, is it the Australian version of Marmite? Yeah, basically. All right. Should probably do questions. Got a handful of those. There's not a lot of them, but they're very long. So you can skip your first question. Cool. That'll save some time. All right. I woke up at 1 p.m. today. I went to bed at 6 a.m. Oh, boy. Holy fucked up circadian rhythm, Batman. That's like, what's it called? That's almost as bad as I got in, that's worse than, or no, that's not worse. That is, yeah, it's almost as bad as I got when I was a teenager in the summertime. When I was like a teenager during summer vacation, I had like times where I was going to bed at like 7 a.m. and waking up at 4 p.m. It was absolute awful. No one should ever do that. Now I am an ancient. I am an old man. I go to bed at like 10:30 and I wake up at like 6:30 or 7. I have an alarm. I have a Fitbit, and the Fitbit has an alarm that wakes you up in like a half-hour area where it sees that you're at the lightest point of your sleep cycle. And so this wakes me up sometime between 6:30 and 7. But because I don't sleep, it kind of wakes me up closer to 6:30. And now I just wake up myself at 6:30 and I can't get back to sleep. It's great. But yeah, like I wake up at like, yeah, I get up at like 7 a.m. and then I go to the gym. And then I come back at like, I get home at like 7 or 8 or 9 in the morning. And that's like when my wife is just like getting up and getting to work. So it's, yeah, my life is, I'm an old man. I am the oldest man. I go to the gym at like 7 a.m. and it's the YMCA. That's another old man point. And the only other people there are like in their 60s and 70s. So yeah, I am like the oldest person. What's the name of the podcast again? It's called It's Probably Not Aliens. You can find the podcast at probsnotaliens.com. All right. Next question we got here is... Yeah, it's probably not aliens. Here, I'll put a link in the chat so you can go to the website and subscribe to it with whatever podcasting thing you do. Sounds like you're the youngest at the YMCA, though. I am. There's a time, like, what's it called? At around 8 or 9, the young people start coming in. Clearly, like a 9. Like, sometimes I get to the gym late, especially if I have on Wednesdays, because I usually prep D&D in the morning before I go. And I get there at, like, noon. But the young people typically get there at like 9 o'clock, and I think they're probably, because it's like 9 a.m., my guess is that they're probably students. Although students usually get their own gym, like Western University has its own gym they get for free. So I don't know why people would pay to go to the YMCA if they would go there, though. I don't know. Probably just people who work from home. What is this live about? This is where I kind of cover the news, talk to people, answer some questions, that kind of thing. I don't know. It's about history and politics, but I also did like a half-hour rant about nuclear power earlier, so... And then I talked about what the history of cancer for another half hour before that. So, you know, that's what the stream's about. Uni gyms are fully booked because COVID. Okay, but like, you know... The YMCA is it's you know, for a gym it's cheap, but it's not like, you know, cheap. Like I paid a lot more than, you know, I paid a painful amount of money to get my gym membership because I'm trying to get strong. Trying to get ripped or something. I'm trying to get healthy because I'm having a son in a month and a half, and I want to play with him and live long enough so that I can see him grow up. So, you know, strong. Your podcast has fallen into the shit my regulars have nothing going new. Wait, that's a good podcast. I'll see what they have new category. Wait, okay. I'm sorry, but your podcast has fallen into the shit my regulars have nothing going new. Wait, that's a good podcast. I'll see what they have new category. I'm not sure I follow that thing. Yeah, I do like that an organization called the Young Man's Christian Association is like entirely made up of old men. Thoughts on Rev Left Radio? I haven't listened to it. Does that mean, is that good? Is shit my regulars have nothing going new? Wait, that's a good podcast. So it means that I'm not on the top tier. I'm not the ones you listen to right away, but I'm on the like, oh, there's a new episode of this and I've got nothing from like my, you know, my S tier podcast, so I'll listen to this. That's what I'm guessing. Which is fine. I'm happy to be an A tier podcast. Can informed police still exist under government structures if the state is abolished? I sincerely hope not. I remember your podcast exists when, like, Behind the Bastards or whatever have no new episodes. Okay. Well, then. Sorry, Tristan. Robert Evans putting a lot of content these days. Yeah. Yeah. I'm having trouble keeping up with Behind the... or with, what's it called? With, what's it called? It could happen here. I'm not like, what's it called? I need to be in a certain headspace to listen to like long interviews about how to grow a garden in case of the apocalypse. So it's not been like, you know, super hot to get. Would it be cool? It would be cool if you did a collaboration with Behind the Bastards. Oh yeah, I would love it. I have a feeling that I wouldn't really make a good guest for Behind the Bastards because usually they want a comedian who doesn't know the history. But I would, yeah. I mean, like, dude, I would kill to do some sort of collaborative project with Robert Evans. He's a fucking mensch. I am just like, I am, what's it called? I am the Walmart store brand version. I am the selection. I am the compliments Robert Evans, and I understand that. Wait, what's his gardening podcast? I was ADHDing. It could happen here as a podcast that he has basically about the things that we should be talking about and the things that we should be learning in the like wake of the collapse of civilization that he thinks is coming soon. Just waiting for the well, there's your problem crossover. Yeah, what's it called? Get it on, lay it on me. I am mutuals with Justin Rosniak. Well, there's your problem. Follows me on Twitter. You got to put pressure on him to get me on the show. Is the thing. So, go yell at Justin or Alice to get me on their show. Nah. If they want me on the show, they'll get me on the show. I know what disaster I'd like to cover, so yeah. As long as somebody doesn't take it. I hope I know exactly what disaster I'd like to be part of. So, yeah. All right, let's see what we got for questions. Gnome Sham. Why do leftists say the Soviet Union fights imperialism? They seem to do as much shitty border expansion crap as the USA did. As much is a bit of a stretch, but definitely there was a Soviet empire. There was a Soviet like metropole and periphery and all that kind of stuff. And there is a sort of uncomfortable reflexive defense of the Soviet Union during the Cold War that some communist circles do that I think is counterproductive to the socialist cause. I made a video about it. It's basically, is socialism a threat, started as that conversation. But they've already done 9/11. I wouldn't do 9/11. I know they've already done 9/11. The 9/11 episode is fucking fantastic. But I would probably ask to do Colombia. The engineering disaster I'd like to do is Colombia. I think that'd be fun. Any thoughts on the Spanish Civil War? Geez, that's such an open-ended question. I liked that it had a legitimate anarchist movement that, like, you know, existed and actually did some cool stuff for a while. I don't like that the fucking Stalinists killed them, or that the fascists won the war. That was bad. Those are my main takeaways from the Spanish Civil War. The shuttle, yeah. I would like to cover the, what's it called? The Columbia disaster. But if they already did a space shuttle episode, then I'll have to think of something else. Feynman already did Columbia. Okay. All right, what we got for the next question? In Southern Victory Against the 1940s, Turtledove does a version of the Holocaust where the victims are African Americans instead of Jews. Holy fuck. I knew Turtledove was into some fucked up shit, but okay. Early on, as in the real Holocaust, some soldiers killed themselves after committing mass murder. So do you think getting white Southerners in the 40s to be okay with mass murdering black people might actually have been easier than getting gentle Germans to be okay with mass murdering Jews? By the late 1940s, Southern whites had been conditioned to think that black people are less than human for centuries, not like a decade. I mean, anti-Semitism was a problem in the Weimar Republic, but Jews weren't being lynched for winking at Gentile women. I mean, citation needed. Jews have been persecuted and subject to violence for a very long time in Europe. I honestly think Turtledove is being naive if he thinks that the Southern soldiers in that time period would be wrapped with guilt over mass murdering black people. I mean, maybe, but also the idea of like a Southern anti-black Holocaust seems a little bit of a stretch, because the problem that kept slavery as a thing in like the American South was that they were hopelessly dependent on slave labor to maintain their economy and way of life. That's the main thing. Any tips for would-be history teachers who don't look forward to creating lesson plans from scratch? Well, I don't know about not looking forward to creating lesson plans from scratch, but I think that a lot of people don't think that history is very relevant or very interesting. The two things you can do to accomplish that is to find the story in all of your lessons, to find characters that did really cool things, to find a way for them to have an emotional through line that makes them care about what it is that's happening, and also to make an effort to explain why these events happening in the past shape the world that we live in today. I think those two things are the principles behind Step Back that I hope to make it kind of stand up and above a typical history channel, if that makes sense. That'd be my advice. I like to think of Step Back as either essays or me telling stories about why history is important. Would I make a video on the Cuban Revolution? Actually, maybe. I was at one point. I was in the process of writing one for the Cold War before I quit writing for the Cold War, and I wrote the sort of like introduction to Cuba video for the Cold War. So I was like, if there was going to be like, you know, whatever the Cuban Revolution video was going to be, I would have been the one that wrote it, and I never got there, so possibly. In the Timeline 191 series and addressing historically accurate basis the Confederacy as a white supremacist society. In the story, though, black folks are scapegoated and stabbed in the back myth. Oh. I mean, I feel like that's like one of the issues that, that's one of the issues of Turtle Dove's work and a lot of alternate history, where they try to make events in history that are basically just the same things that happen in our history, just in a different place and in different contexts. These would all unfold in different ways, and it feels very unrealistic, is the thing. Love for you to talk about the anarchists in the Cuban Revolution, the Marxists led to silence after it. Interesting. Oh, what's up? Step back. You becoming a degenerate hour streamer? I do 2 streams a week. One is at a European-friendly time, which is the one I do on Mondays. And another is at a North America-friendly time, which I do on Tuesdays. That's sort of my way to be happy. Am I in favor of open borders? Do you think borders play a role in keeping societies functioning? No, I hate borders. They are an affront to humanity. Humanity has defined itself through our long history by moving and mixing and just like being mobile, and borders are an artificial line in the sand by major basically organized crime syndicates that we call countries, that claim that everybody who lives within them belong to me, and that you know, nobody can what's it called, that nobody can be allowed to come in or out without my permission. And I think that's bullshit, and that this planet does not belong to anybody. It belongs to everybody. And yeah. I would, yeah, I would like to open borders because borders are not a concept we have anymore. Countries as a thing are a blight on our existence. In Southern Victory, black partisans actually aid the enemy in the books, World War I, and Turtle Dove doesn't seem to get how problematic that is, even if they're in a stand-in for Jews. Oh. Man, I really don't want to read this book anymore. I mean, I am not like a big fan of Turtle Dove, even at the best of times, but man, his alternate history sounds like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me anyway. And then just, yeah, inserting characters to be like, look, the South, but it's Hitler. Like, that's, yeah, that's silly. That's a bad way to do alternate history. What do I know about Ricardo Flores Magón? I do not know anything about him. Thoughts on John Brown? Based, awesome. Fucking the greatest Chad in American history. I have had for a long time a what's it called? I have as a back burner video idea, which is called like John Brown, America's Greatest Chad, and just like, cause yeah, he was so against slavery that he killed slavers with a fucking sword, the broadsword, and got arrested trying to break into a weapons cache to to arm a slave revolt, and it's like, oh my! And then he's the guy who, when he died, he was the one who was like, "There will be no redemption in this country except through blood." It's like, holy fuck. And also, like, he was married to his wife for like 10 years, and they had 10 kids, so he definitely fucks. So yeah, he apparently abused his wife. Well, I don't know about that. This is the first I'm hearing of it. Would it be that hard to get white Southerners on board with genocide? I think it would, because it's not like the thing is that anti-Semitism in Germany is a very different story than anti-black racism in the South. First, there's the fact that in Germany, Jews were a minority. They were a small group of people. That had a narrative constructed around them, a conspiracy theory about them being a sort of like evil underminer of Christian society. And this has been around forever. This is like it's called like it was building on a narrative about Jews that has been as old as there has been anti-Semitism in Europe. And that the German genocide program was built on that specific cultural context. The South was very different. The South's racial caste system was very explicit and was very much based on a kind of sandwich class of poor whites who built their identity and sense of self-worth by identifying them as being better than black people. That was basically how they felt their sense of self-worth in a very, very unequal society like the American South. Furthermore, the elites of the American South, even if racism was a very prevalent thing, they were hopelessly economically dependent on black labor. To the point where, a lot of the reason why they doubled down so hard in the Civil War wasn't just because they were just so goddamn racist, although they were, but because their entire economic livelihood, their entire culture depended on having a caste of people that, average people could look down upon to make themselves feel better, and that the rich basically held up their entire community, their entire economy with. And in that kind of situation, I don't see genocide as being a thing that would come to their to the logic of that kind of situation. Genocide as in the systematic eradication of an entire race of people, I feel like would not fit with the logics of the Confederacy or the way that the South worked. Brutal. And someone mentioned that the 1863 race war thing. Yes, they definitely would have done that for rebellion, because putting down any forms of slave rebellion was extremely important in order to keep the caste system stable. Furthermore, during the Jim Crow era, random racist violence, through the Klan and lynchings and stuff like that, was also important for them trying to maintain the racial caste system in the South. But systematic eradicative genocide feels very outside of what they would do. Yeah, Marco Mouse is probably the most right here. If the South managed to gain independence, they would probably have ended up more like apartheid South Africa than Nazi Germany. I think that is the most accurate answer. So in their minds, it would be like saying, why don't we kill all of our horses, to make a gross comparison. To an extent. Also, keep in mind that two white Southerners, especially white slave owners, they had their brain contorted into all sorts of strange logic to think that what they were doing was a kindness to black people, that they were giving them stability and honest labor that they wouldn't do on their own. It's a grotesque, very, very racist concept of trying to justify the enslavement of an entire race of people. But yeah, that you are in essence right about how they would think about it. There was that mockumentary about the CSA today with modern slavery. It was odd. Yes, I've seen that. It's strangely good. I like that it ends with like the main character of the documentary finding out that he's part black and basically being on the run from the law. Anyways, what's the next question we got here? That scene where Paul and Jessica are in that tent, he starts ranting. Does the scene give too much away? Like, I've not actually read the books, but I know enough about the Dune universe to know Paul isn't really a chosen one, and it won't necessarily be good if he actually gets to fulfill his destiny. Does that scene in the tent give away that will actually happen in the end? Will the movie still be trying to make us think it's a conventional chosen one narrative? No, I don't. The thing about Dune is that it's not really a chosen one narrative. Because, like, or at least it's not like he was destined by some sort of deity or something like that. Like, his role in history to create the sort of fire of the jihad in Dune is very much something that he talks about in the early part of the books, because a big part of the themes of Dune is about long arcs of history and about specifically about prescience and about the ability to see the future. And the idea that he is going to set off a war that will kill multiples of Hitler throughout the universe, and him being terrified of that, but also knowing that it's kind of inevitable, is a central part of Paul's story as he advances, which you'll see in the next movie. And then also Dune Messiah and Children of Dune, more so Dune Messiah. Dune Messiah also heavily plays into this, because basically the second book, he is at the head of this this war that is basically spilling over the entire universe. And he's trying to find a way to stop that. It's pretty wild. What's it called? I think you need to have that part of Paul's story for his character to make sense in the back half of the book. So you should read Dune. If you're a big fan of Iain Banks, you'll probably love Dune. Swear, if you read Dune, you'll like it way more than Iain Banks. Sorry, I know I went past a minute ago, but whose 9/11 podcast were you talking about? Well, There's Your Problem is the name of the podcast. Hey, good Morty. Thank you for the $10 super chat. The Bene Gesserit are just moms. If a secret society of stern moms spent 10,000 years perfecting the mom drop this instant voice, that's exactly what would happen. That's so perfect. Yes, you're right. I didn't like the book. Too much telling and not enough showing. Really? Really? Because a lot of the times people's issue is quite the opposite. A lot of people's issues with Dune is that it does too much showing and not enough telling, because it introduces a whole lot of stuff without explaining it, and then they just expect you to like read the 100-page appendices to understand what they're talking about. Like so usually the problem with what's it called, Dune's, like reading Dune, is that they don't tell you anything. They just kind of like act as if they are members of a universe when nothing is explained to you. In Doom, when they refer to the Empire ruling the entire universe, how literal are they being? They say he's the emperor of the known universe, I guess. So all of the planets that have been discovered and stuff. Is checks and balances a colonizer mindset? I mean, it was literally made by colonizers, so yes. But the idea that, like, checks and balances is all about making sure that no one branch of government gets too powerful, which is very much rooted in that sort of like liberal idea of trying to avoid too much democracy. Like, I'm making a video later this year, I think probably for, it's either December, January, or February anyway, where I'm going to talk about how America is an anti-democracy, and that a lot of how America's government was structured is intentionally to prevent the desires of the voting populace to ever change government. And checks and balances is definitely a part of that process. Because the American government is specifically designed to ensure that if, say, a really big movement swept through America and they elected an entire house full of people, that there would still be a Senate and a Supreme Court and a White House that would enforce not making sure that nothing they wanted would actually pass. But the idea of how checks and balances work in America specifically, yeah, there's a mindset in that. That is about making sure that people don't have too much power over the elites. Whether or not that's specifically colonizer, If you do not like borders, what's your opinion on separatist movements like Quebec, Catalonia, or Scotland? Do they make sense in your view? I mean, if they want it, sure. If it makes sense to them, sure. I think that it's different in different places, but those three cases all have very specific historical contexts that are complicated. Are checks and balances classist rather than colonial? Yes, they are very elitist. Remember when Alberta talked about separating after the 2019 election? Boy, do I. Yeah, the Wexit movement. It's still a thing. It's not doing great, but there is definitely a contingent of, like, Wexiteers and stuff. Anyways, in the Dune universe, is there an alternate way to do FTL without spice? When you and Mio were talking about the movie, you compared the Empire exploiting Arrakis for spice and the West exploiting the Middle East for oil. But we could stop exploiting the Middle East that way if we justified alternative forms of fuel. Is there an alternative spice, or what would be stopping the exploitation of Arrakis, literally bringing all galactic civilization crashing down? If it's the latter, I think the ethics of the two situations are kind of non-comparable. I don't like speculative fiction series where the case is that the society stops exploiting another. The common people and the former will necessarily have to suffer. I think stories like that undermine international class solidarity. They intentionally or not imply working class Westerners need to back terrible things. Okay. So the way that faster than light travel works in the Dune universe, because the thing about the Dune universe is that they are 10,000 years into a society that has essentially banned all forms of computers, all forms of sophisticated computers anyway. So they've invented. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Let me just find out what it's called. So in Dune, their ships are equipped with something called they're space folder vessels that use something called the Holtzman effect to essentially bend space and time in order to travel faster than light. But you need the way to navigate through bent space requires the ability to see the future. And the only way that you can see the future in order to navigate through this space is you have to make what's called a guild navigator, which are people who have who take astronomical amounts of spice that it essentially mutates their body into sort of like these like monstrous things that people don't typically get to see. And their ability to see the future allows these ships to navigate this folded space properly and safely. And that's why you need space for faster than light travel. I will say that the answer you're coming to, that that if the conclusion that the book comes to is that you do not need Arrakis to make space civilization happen, and they actively show in the books that that Arrakis would be a better place if it wasn't for society's dependence on spice, and that spice is actively stopping them from innovating and finding new ways to travel. I don't want to spoil too much of the series, but that plays a really big role in some of the later books. Someone asked, why ban computers? That's a good question. So 10,000 years before Dune, the time of the first Dune book, basically it's like your artificial intelligence Terminator type story, where thinking machines essentially took over the known universe and pushed humans to the brink of extinction. But they were repelled back by a group of humans that in a war called the Butlerian Jihad, where they're able to push back the humans, or they're able to push back the machines. But in doing so, they had to create an entire civilization that did not have computers, because the AIs could basically destroy any advanced computers they had. So that they had to go back to feudalism. They had to reinstate slavery. They had to do all sorts of experiments with drugs to have humans fill the role that computers would fill. And they did all sorts of stuff to defeat the machines. And then after the machines were defeated, in order to make sure that nothing like that ever happens again, they have essentially banned computers. And in the 10,000 years since, they have still developed tons of advanced technology, and they've done so without using computers. Mostly by using drugs to get humans to have the capacity to do the things that computers do. That's the general story. Yeah, that's the other thing, is that all of the spice production and all of the fast and light travel is controlled by the Spacing Guild, and is marketed through the Chome Corporation in Dune, and they maintain a monopoly on space travel. And yeah, researching into alternate forms of fast and light travel is prohibited. How did they defeat the machines? Through jihad. Exactly. The Butlerian Jihad. You guys don't even know what you've walked into. Dune is like my shit. I know so much about the Dune lore. But like in the book, if you haven't read the books, like Thufir Hawat, who is the family of Atreides, is Mentat. You remember him? He was the guy who had the Mentats in the Dune movie, the what's it called? The Denis Villeneuve Dune movie, have this tattoo on their lip, and they do that thing where like their eyes go white. Those are Mentats, and Mentats are like advisors to the wealthy families who are they're sort of the counterpoint to the Bene Gesserit. This is very like gender essentialist stuff from the 1960s on Frank Herbert's part, but his whole idea is that women were powerful through the Bene Gesserit, and they were like the intuitive, emotional ones who, through kind of the controlling of people's feelings and reproduction and all those kinds of feminine domains, are carving like the perfect person. But the Mentats are like an order of like basically humans who juice themselves up with drugs to turn them into human computers, and they have to all be men, and so they're like they're like super in like the male side of this equation of order and logic and structure and like computing and all that kind of stuff. It's super stupid, but it's very much like it's very much like a late 60s idea of how gender works. But yeah. Do you buy that, or did it only seem plausible in '65 because Herbert didn't realize computers would be in almost everything in the future? Maybe. I think that it's cool. I think that the things that they did to get around computers is kind of cool, and I like because like the idea that we imagine our world, we can't even imagine a future without computers. The idea of even speculating about a far future without computers, I think, is really cool, and it makes the setting of Dune a very unique feeling setting that is missing from a lot of science fiction. It feels different in a lot of ways other science fiction do not. And so I like it a lot for that reason. They wanted to make Paul Atreides a Mentat. Yeah, they do. But like, I love all like because like in the books, there's also a lot of little things to show how their society functions without computers. Like someone mentioned the Orange Catholic Bible in the chat, and the Orange Catholic Bible that Paul has is this extremely tiny book that has like 5,000 or 6,000 pages, and all of the writing on it is in like very, very, very tiny print. And the way that it works is that all of the pages are like statically charged in a way so that if you touch certain parts of the pages, it flips open to the page that you want, and it comes with this like big magnifying glass for reading. And it's like that's such a cool concept. I love it. All right. Yesterday you said you were that if you were in a situation Banks was in after 9/11, you'd try to make the Islamic-coded alien sympathetic. So the reasons the Adirans, that's what they were called, had far-right Islamic coding is he was trying to get them to represent all ideas of conservatism that existed in 1987. Like, they can also be read as evangelical Christians, Reagan-era neocons, or just fascists in general. He wants the culture to be the ideal left-wing society, so the Adirans, society they were in conflict with, have to be the total opposite. What do you do if the racists have latched onto the idea that it's cool to hate a society you've gone out of your way to depict as the ultimate evil in the galaxy? I think I don't know what to do after the fact, but the main problem is that having an ultimate evil in the galaxy, maybe making a book about the Adirans having their own revolution, or having a descent within like a big space empire or something like that. You could do something cool. They didn't mention those were rare and people were using digital viewers for books. Yeah, they haven't banned computers. They've banned like advanced computers, but they still have like Kindles that use tape and stuff like that. Like basically miniaturized microfiche readers and stuff like that. You probably, like, what's it called? They even had like 3D film reels, like that one that they did show in Dune when they were using to do like little bits of exposition in the Hunter Seeker scene specifically. What is the country's government that you agree the most with? Venezuela's, Cuba's, modern day? So man, Cuba's kind of going on a neoliberalism path right now. I guess Venezuela, although Venezuela's got some issues going on too. I don't really have a good answer to that. All right. For the record, I think Banks didn't handle gender as well as he might have, and it troubles me that as far as I'm aware, he never really addressed his right-wing fans before he died. I'm worried you may have taken my last question to be like, well, what is he supposed to do if some of his fans sucked? I mean, you can only do so much. At the end of the day, death of the author is a thing, and he can only control how his work is interpreted to, some limited extent. So, yeah, I mean, it's not the wrongest thing, but also, yeah, it does show that like there were probably some, like the problem that had the right be able to latch onto his thing is that he made a entire species of irredeemable monsters, which is not very logical, is very ahistorical, and leads is sort of the thinking that the far right fall into. And I think that was the problem. Dune was only good if you had read the books. Maybe. But then the answer is read the books, because the books fucking rule. It's like some of the best books I've ever read. And I've only read the first 3. I haven't read the 4th, 5th, and 6th books. But I will. There are some fascists that latch on a Tolkien. That makes sense, actually. Not that Tolkien was a fascist, but that, like, there is a link between... Because Tolkien kind of had this idea of, like, this, fascism sort of comes from, like, romanticism. And Tolkien very much was a romantic, an idea that there was, like, a simpler time in the past, before industry, before technology, where things were better. And that runs through Tolkien's work. And that is a thing that fascists and romantics would both latch onto. So I can see that happening. Chair dogs are eugenics and animal abuse. Yeah, well, aren't chair dogs usually done by weren't they Harkonnen monstrosities or something like that? Where do you get the cool, creepy, free vaporware? You mean the music? It's a playlist on Spotify called Stream Beats. They have playlists for all sorts of genres of music, but I like synthwave a lot, so that's where the music comes from. It's Stream Beats on Spotify. I have a friend who has a family Spotify plan, and she added me as a member like 7 or 8 years ago, and I've just gotten free Spotify Premium ever since. He actually did that more. I think he liked the idea that it'd be an interesting moral dilemma if there were some races who were naturally evil. Yeah, but I think that the idea that there is like an entire race of people that is naturally evil, like that sets a bad precedent. That's like, if you think about the line of thinking that leads you towards, it's very much not leftist thinking. What are some non-U.S. political figures that you admire? Ooh, I like Kropotkin. I like Kropotkin's, like, you know, wise, old style a lot. His way of thinking is very admirable to me, but he's more of a writer than, like, a historical figure. Not so much for... I mean, trying to think of like a really good one that is I find there are some historical figures that I don't exactly like agree with them or like them as people, but they're very interesting. Like Ibn Battuta, I think, had a very interesting life, and it's really good. It's really interesting to read about the life he had, sort of exploring the world and writing about them in a time where it was like very dangerous to travel anywhere. That I thought was really cool. You know, there's those kinds of things. I'm so unaccustomed to admiring historical figures, is the thing, though. And I obviously know way more about American history than anything else, because that's like, you know, I've done 2 master's degrees in it. There's what's his face, that Swedish guy who saved a whole bunch of lives. He's pretty cool. I'm trying to remember what his name is, but he rescued a bunch of people from the Holocaust. You should be skeptical of anyone you want to meet named Ivan. They tend to be, oh god. Che's admired by many, but there are good reasons for that. Yeah, like, what's it called? There are a lot of videos about Che Guevara, though, so I've like, I should do a video on Indira Gandhi. Maybe. One of my really close friends here is she immigrated here from India like 2 or 3 years ago, and she has been really on my keister about making some more India content, especially the region that she's from, which apparently doesn't get that much attention. So that's my thing. Nestor Makhno, yeah, Nestor Makhno is pretty based. He's like a relentless badass, that's for sure. You've done a video on him already, though. Yeah, although the Nestor Makhno video is high on my list of, like, either the Nestor Makhno or the Spanish Civil War video are likely to be my my video I do next September when I return to, because I'm making a tradition where every September on the anniversary of Step Back, I go and revisit one of my old videos, and the Nestor Makhno one is probably going to be close. The Tamil Nadu video, yes. Oh my God, that would take things full circle. That's like a paleo Step Back meme. That's like what's it called? I don't think people haven't made do Tamil Nadu stream memes in like almost a year and a half. Is it the communist area of India? I'd watch that. There's two provinces of India that have had communist governments. One is Kerala, which still has one, and East Bengal or West Bengal, which is sort of the part that speaks Bengali but is in India, that had a communist government but doesn't anymore, and that's where my friend is from. I paid a trans person to review one of Ian Banks's books because I thought his utopia was too gender essentialist, even though he gave his characters the change of sex at will. Tamil Nadu? Yeah. So Tamil Nadu, so there was this guy who, this is like really early in Step Back. I haven't heard from him in years now. But every single video, he commented, "Good video, do Tamil Nadu." And he did this over and over again on every single video, every time I released it. Like, great video, loved it, do Tamil Nadu. And eventually I was doing a stream one day, and he showed up in the chat, and I was like, holy shit, that's the do Tamil Nadu guy. I have like seen you say do Tamil Nadu so many times. And then, because the what's it called? The stream chat back then was a lot more trolly, and they loved to what's it called? They made a lot more memes than they do today. So people started then telling me to do Tamil Nadu in the chat a whole bunch of times, and then they started photoshopping memes in the Step Back Discord and all that kind of stuff. It was pretty wild. I loved it a lot. I still have a lot of them saved on my computer. My favorite is getting a DM from Tamil Nadu that says "do me." That was pretty fun. But yeah, man, the stream was a very different place back then. We fucked around a lot more. It was a lot sillier back then. Don't worry, you guys are great too. Now I'm a grown-up. Now I'm an old man. I'm going to be a dad in a month and a half. I can't go being weird and dumb and stuff anymore. Yeah. Anyways, it is 9:01, so I got to go and find someone to raid. Oh, okay. Let's do Irene. Sure. Irene's always good value. All right. What is Tamil Nadu, though? Tamil Nadu is a region in India. All right. So, everybody, I'm going to go away now. We're gonna raid. We're gonna raid soon. So, yeah, I will. I'll be back on Monday. So, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other, and we'll see you on the other side.